Hi, I'm Dory Edwards. I'm a realtor with North & Co Real Estate. I've been a full-time agent for 6 years, and we're excited to have you join this town hall. We're going to discuss the changes, the new compensation changes for realtor is in the MLS. And I'm here with my partner.
Hi, I'm Richard Silva with Fairway Independent Mortgage, the #1 lender here in the state of Arizona, and 20 years of experience ready to help you out. Let's get started.
We're getting this party started. We're going to honor the people who got here on time. All right, so thank you for being here for this town hall. This is really our intention is to help you guys to be better informed. There's a lot of misinformation out there, especially on social media, about the changes that are coming our way, and I just wanted to make sure that our clients are the best informed clients around. So let's get started. So like I said, my name is Dory Edwards. I've been a full-time realtor for the last 6 years here in the Valley, in the Phoenix metropolitan area, and really love what I do, and just want to make sure everyone is taken care of. And this is my colleague, Richard Silva. He's gonna
Good morning, everyone.
himself.
I am Richard Silva with Fairway Independent Mortgage. Just so you are aware, we are nationwide, and in Arizona, we are the #1 purchase lender in the entire state. So I'm very happy to be working for that company, and you'll see also multiple awards. We do lots of things with veterans, and one thing I'm very proud of is we just gave away our 386th service dog to a veteran this last week. So exciting to work for a company that does give back to the community. So once again, we're just trying to help you out with everything you're hearing out there, and please ask questions throughout. We will have questions and answers at the end, but if we do go over something and you do have a question, please just let us know, and then we'll try to answer that for you right away.
Yep, and you can either use the raise hand feature on Zoom, or you can just, put your hand up. All right, so this is our agenda for the day. So first of all, we're just going to go over the implications of the settlement, like what has us actually be here to start with. And the reason we're here is there was a lawsuit filed initially in Missouri by a seller, and it turned into a class action lawsuit. And the basic complaint was like, hey, as a seller, we've had to pay the commission for both the buyer's and the seller's agent. Why am I paying for somebody to negotiate against my interest? And that's why the lawsuit was brought. And the settlement, ultimately, $418 million settlement, decided that in order to settle it, that the seller no longer has to offer compensation to a buyer's agent, and that furthermore, any offers of compensation are moved off of the MLS entirely. These changes will go into effect on August 17th, so that's pretty soon, and the actual settlement isn't even finalized. There was just new information released on Friday. One thing to know is that even though the changes go into effect on August 17th, we literally don't have the new forms yet. There are 18 new forms that are still being developed.
Yes.
And those forms are supposed to be sent to be finalized July 1st. And the MLS here has decided to actually have the changes go into effect on the 1st of August in terms of what you'll see, right? So we want to talk about that.
And one thing there as well, Dory, is we're going to be able to show you what you see today, and what things are going to be gone in the future.
Yeah, so a hint of things to come.
Exactly.
If you will. So today, especially if you've bought a house recently, this thing is just going nuts here. That, like, hey, buyer's agent, let's go look at housing. You're like, awesome, let's jump in the car, get you pre-qualified if you need, or if you're paying cash, great, we're just gonna hop in the car. You don't have to worry about coming out of pocket for, paying your buyer's agent because the seller's taking care of it. That's how it's been for decades. And there's a primary document that binds the relationship between a buyer and their agent is the real estate agency and disclosure election document, which I'll show you. Starting August, everyone who is buying a house and using a realtor, a real estate agent, will have to sign a buyer broker agreement before you ever hop in the car to go look at houses. So that's going to be a requirement for everyone, whereas today I think less than 5% of agents and clients use that document. That should be a 100%. And the buyer and their agent will negotiate their compensation up front, right? And that's going to be something that's in a written employment agreement that has a beginning date and an end date and says an amount.
David, did you have a question? Okay, I thought I saw your screen.
All right, great.
Okay.
So this is the real estate agency disclosure and election document that you may recognize. And you can see at the top it says this document is not an employment agreement. It just lays out the fiduciary duties that an agent has to whether buyer or seller, right? So honesty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is something probably looks familiar as well if you've been looking at houses. You've seen this format here, and you can see where I've circled in red at the bottom the offer of conversation. The BB there is buyer broker. Yes, they're being compensated to the tune of 2.75%. This field only used to be visible to realtors up until about 2 years ago, and in anticipation of the decisions, they made it visible to consumers as well, to the public. You may or may not have noticed that. Maybe, have you noticed that? Yes, right?
Okay.
So that's something that you've noticed. This field is going away entirely. So whereas before, before 2 years ago, I as an agent and other agents could see this, that field is going away entirely, right? And you can't even put it in some other areas. Remarks, it's going away. No offers of compensation will be allowed to be visible on the MLS.
To
anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was just for the buying agent.
No, so we're not going back to how it was, where it's like only agents could see. It's gone. That field is gone, not visible. And that's a direct result of the settlement. This is the buyer broker exclusive employment agreement. You can see this document was last updated October of 2022. So it's not like it didn't exist before. It just hasn't been widely in use before. And it would have, similar to a listing agreement, which is an employment agreement, it has a name on it, it has the agent's name, it has a start date and an end date. I just put these dates in here, so 90 days, that's typically gonna be sufficient time to find a house and, get it closed, but that can be any period of time. That could be a year, and you can see here's locate property meeting the following residential, and you can put in geographic location. I put in Maricopa County. That can say Arizona. That can say, a specific address. So again, it can be anything. And the agency relationship. I didn't put the bottom half of this because that is going to change. So this document is literally still being redlined and written up by committees right now, but in the future, every buyer will need to sign a document like this, and what's going to be at the bottom part is going to say compensation to be, and it can either be as a percentage, it can be as a flat fee, or it could say nothing, right? That's going to be negotiated up front before you hop in the car, though, and that's the biggest change. Richie, what do you want to say?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And as a lender, we see the contracts, and everything comes through our desk for us to have a copy to help you and work with title so that we're all working together. And here at Magnus Title, who's helping us out with this whole situation,
Yay, Magnus!
Us getting out there and talking to you, we work as a team, and that's just how it works here. But for myself, I will tell you, less than half a percent. I see 3 a year.
Yeah,
like that.
20 years in the business.
Yeah,
right.
So
that's how infrequently.
It's going to be interesting, and hopefully, agents. Well, here's what I see, and I'm just putting this out there. Agents that are not full time and doing this all the time are not going to know all this stuff. I'm just telling you. I see agents that do 1 transaction a year, and the contract is faxed to me. So you want somebody that knows what's going on and understands and represents you. So I just want to give you those 2 cents there. But these changes need to be with somebody that's involved and current with what the current changes are. So
all right,
thanks, Dory.
fantastic. No, it's great. All right, so and then Richie is going to speak to some impacts on buyers from a lending standpoint. And 20 years in the business. Also, he did my personal home loan. He's just fantastic. Refer him to my clients all the time. I can't say enough good things about him.
So here's some of the things that a lot of questions have arisen on our lender's going to be able to finance the fees, or what is going to happen. So here's what you can see. What I have here for you is you can see what the contribution can be by the percentage of the down payment that you're putting on a property. For example, if you are 90% or less, you're putting 10% or less down, the maximum contribution you can get from a seller is 3%, okay? But now Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are letting you get additional funds from the seller to pay the buying agent if, once again, if that is what is negotiated. And it's no percentages and so forth. It's not a flat dollar amount. That's something that they will take care of on their end.
What's the amount that you, so in addition to, like, if you're saying here, if you're putting down 10%, then
3% can be for your closing costs, buying down your rate, anything for your loan.
okay,
And then additionally, there could be additional funds by the seller, which could help pay your agent that's helping you buy that property.
does that have a cap on it, or
It
is
does not have a cap on it, and it will be on a completely separate line on our applications, and it will only be noticed when you get your final settlement statement and so forth, and you'll be able to see where that line will be when you're signing your documents.
Gotcha. So can the seller contribute 5% of the purchase price towards a buyer's agent compensation?
Yes, they can.
Can they contribute 50%?
If they crazy, yes, they can.
All right, great. That's good to know. I thought there were going to be specific limits
No.
in terms of what's allowed. So that's a sea change from a lending standpoint, yes?
At this point, that's what we have. Once we know the final information, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac will make their adjustments. But like FHA is completely different.
Okay.
So you can see here, FHA, a seller can contribute up to 6% to help pay your closing costs and so forth. You can even use that 6% to pay your upfront mortgage insurance that's paid on your loan. So that's what you can do with that. Plus now they're allowing additional funds to pay the buying agent's commissions.
And that is,
Not part of the 6%.
so you can do 6% to, like, hey, to help with your rate buy down, to help with closing costs.
Correct.
And then an additional amount to pay buyer's agent compensation.
Correct.
And have they specified the amount for that?
There is no limit on what they've specified with an amount at this point.
At this point, this is, again, there's still changes you can see here, like,
And I'll
you talk
show
about the
you
VA.
what some information in a couple of slides away. VA, this was interesting. VA was not going to budge. Oh, was there a question? Okay. VA was not going to budge. They were not going to allow it. We just got this on Monday. So VA is now allowing buyers to pay their agent's commission with the seller contributing or however they're going to do it. That will go into effect on August 10th. Before they were not going to allow it because the VA, once again, when you're doing a VA purchase, you can do zero down.
Yep.
So if you have zero down, then why are we going to let you pay the agent? But they were looking at then who's going to give somebody a VA loan. They are not going to be the buyers out there. So they made some changes there, which is great. All these are good changes so that there are opportunities for everybody in every level
Yes.
of loans that we have.
Great, thank you. Let me just speak to this a little bit more because I think, and we're going to talk about this, that I think where the impacts will be, it'll be different in different levels of the market. So if you're a first-time home buyer and the median price of a home in Arizona right now for a single-family home is $451,000. So if you've, saved up, $20,000, $25,000 to put down 5% to buy your first house, and then now you've got to put closing costs, which can be a point or two, like 1 or 2% of the price, in addition to having to come out of pocket another $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 to pay your agent. That's a lot of money. That's a steep hill for a first-time home buyer
Correct.
to climb. So I think what you're going to see is in different market segments that seller compensation might still be something that is valuable in order to expose your home to the widest possible market. Whereas if you are looking at a house that's maybe at a higher price point, $800,000, $1 million in this market, that seller likely has some equity in their home, and they're probably dealing with a buyer who's also selling a home to buy. They're typically not going to be dealing with a first-time home buyer at an $800,000 or $1 million price point. So they're going to probably have funds that don't feel like they came right out of your pocket. You know, it's like proceeds from a sale feel different from like money out of your pocket in order to pay. So, you know, again, nobody knows how this is going to shake out. We're going to talk a little bit how it could shake out, but nobody knows how exactly it's going to shake out. But I think you're going to see differences for how this actually plays out depending on the price point.
And another thing as well, you know, there's such a myth out there that you can't buy a house without 20% down. And I talk to first-time home buyers all the time that are like, I don't have 20%, I don't have 20%. And now, and part of the education that we want to give you as well is we don't want you to feel that you need 20% plus the money to pay for your agent to take you out.
Good point.
That is not the reality of what's going to be happening out there.
Right.
That would be a change that would be extremely difficult for anyone to purchase when you're looking at that.
So where can you start if you're a first-time home buyer?
First-time home buyer, depending on credit and work, we are looking at 3% is the minimum going conventional. FHA is 3.5. And you know, there's just different criterias with different credit scores, and if you're self-employed and all of that kind of stuff.
All right, but if you've got really good credit, you can put as little down as 3%, and
100%.
it might cost you in mortgage insurance.
Yes.
Okay. All right, fantastic. So seller impacts. So as a seller, like the immediate thing, you're like, woohoo, woohoo. You know, it's going to be less money for me to sell because I don't have to pay a buyer's agent. And I've actually started to see some listings in the MLS right now that have a 0%, or I saw one yesterday that had 1.65%. I was like, oh, that's charming. I wonder how they came up with that number. So the listing agreement, again, there are 18 forms that are changing. I don't have what the current forms are going to look like. I have an idea because I've seen markups, you know, from having attended training. So the listing agreement's going to give sellers an opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to pay you, listing agent, who I'm signing this employment agreement with, I'm just going to pay you, and I'm going to pay you, you know, 50 strawberries. We're going to use fruit today. We're going to pay you 50 strawberries to market my house effectively and find a ready, willing, and able buyer. And, you know, I'm not going to pay anything to a buyer's agent, right? Because I've got a beautiful house, and people are going to just want to come and buy my house. Okay, that might work if you have like the prettiest house on the block in the best area. That really might work, and houses are moving quickly if they are super pretty and HGTV ready. But what if you don't have the prettiest house on the block and you haven't updated it? And you know, I don't like to work for free. I love what I do, but I don't like to work for free. Do you like to work for free?
No.
Anybody out there like to work for free? No. So you're going to be hard pressed to find a buyer's agent to come and work for you for free. I've got somebody in the room who's like saying they will work for, please raise your hand, identify yourself. We have a permanent volunteer in the house. So, you know, it's likely that somebody's going to be paying the buyer's agent. And if the seller is, what I've been telling people is that while you don't have to put aside, you know, there's no requirement for you to pay your buyer's agent, I think it's wise at this point, especially while we're in a transitional phase here, is to set aside some money for that expense. Like you would set aside money for repairs. Like, you know, like just have it as something set aside so that if that's the thing that's going to make the difference, if it's like, you know, 2, 3, 4%, that's going to make the difference between you selling your house now or not. Man, if you got an offer for your house that was 98% of your asking price, you'd probably take that offer, wouldn't you? So that's like the same kind of thinking that I think for now could be wise if you don't have the hottest, bestest house on the block, right? Because you might find that you can price your house competitively and still have the appraisal, cover it, and, you know, let the lender come in and have the buyer be able to finance some of that, what their realtor might cost, right?
Dollars, correct.
Right, so there's going to be ways, but you don't have to, right? is the main thing, but you want to speak with somebody. You want to have an agent who's savvy enough to position you in the right place and know where you are in the market, especially if you're, are you trying to attract a first-time home buyer, or are you trying to attract people who have money? It's like you want to position yourself smartly.
And one other thing on that is we don't know, a first-time home buyer might be a trust fund baby and wants $1 million property. So we can't really put anybody into a box. I want to give you an example that happened to me yesterday. This is fresh off the press. So I have a client that just went into contract and so forth, and they are keeping their current home until they move. They have 4 children. There's no way they were going to be in an apartment or move twice. So here's the scenario. He asked me yesterday, what's going on with the commissions for the sale of my house? Can you explain to me what's happening? So I gave him, at this point, it's the same, no changes for you, but in the future it would be like this. His response to me was, why would anyone bring anyone to see my house if I wasn't going to pay them? Why am I not, it's like I'm marketing my house by incenting them, and that's what he said. It was his marketing by the incentive to pay that agent to bring people in. That's how he feels he's going to get the most for his property. And that is the mindset I think people need to have. They understand it. It's just being done in a different way with bananas and strawberries. And that's because we're staying with the fruit. And I'm going to give you, once again, an example coming up with what's out there. But I think it's really interesting, once again, that was his first question to me was, what's it going to change for me now? And I'm like, it's not yet. But.
Yep. And it is going to be something that, it's negotiable, it's negotiable, it's negotiable. That's a word that you'll hear a lot going forward, is that even though there hasn't been a fixed way, there's been a sort of a standard operating procedure, if you will. Now, agent compensation is going to be a lot more malleable than it has been in the past, and more of a negotiating point in a transaction than it has been in the past. And you just want to be smart about it. And look, if you don't have a mortgage, or if it's not an expense for you and you don't mind waiting to find the right buyer who's got the money to buy your house, don't offer agent compensation. You literally don't have to do anything that doesn't work for you.
100%.
Okay? All right.
So let me tell you what I've been talking about. That's going to be our next slide here.
Okay, great.
So the state of Washington knew that this was coming last year, and effective January 1st, they changed the laws in the state. They actually had it to what our future will be, where you are not going, it spells out what the buyers and the sellers are willing to pay for their services. You don't see the line anymore where it's that we had circled, where you would see the compensation for the buying agent. That has gone away. Mm-hmm. They are what our future is. And the reason I bring this up is we're nationwide. So we had a meeting with a bunch of loan officers in Washington State to tell us how different, what our future looks like. And this is what we're seeing. So they did a survey, and so far for the year, and you will see that the entire commission now has been 5.25. This is a commission that's being split between the buyer's agent and the listing agent. You can see here as well that 2.75 has been going to the listing agent, and then 2.51 to the buying agent, which is pretty incredible when you're looking at that, with it being a 5.25 today with the new plan, okay? Once again, they are doing this. The state wanted to be proactive and get it going quickly. You can see the average nationwide commission is 5.49. So you can see the difference there. It's about 0.25% difference, but overall not the biggest impact that people are worried about. I will say that the 5.49 has a lot to do with, being that high has a lot to do with the state of California. California does have commissions in some areas that are 5% both ways, so that's 10%. So that is a
That's-
big thing
that's
there.
pricey.
Yeah, and those are expensive homes too. So
Packing my
yeah,
bags
and
to
I know that because I'm also
California.
licensed in California. So it's interesting to see the negotiation that's going there. But see, here is a great example of what it's going to look like in the future. So just wanted to give you that information there for anybody that's considering the buying or selling, that this is what I see as a good example of what the future is going to look like.
Yep, so this is a 6-month look into the future, right? All right. So any questions or is anything unclear about what we've gone through so far? Okay, great. So navigating the new market. So who? Judy has a question? Judy Pansellers. Hi, Judy. Oh, I can't hear.
I can't hear you.
Judy, I can't hear you. You're off mute, but I can't hear her.
I think you're going to turn up your volume. Yeah.
Stand by. My volume's on. Oops, nope, that's not it. There you go.
There you are.
Okay, I feel like I can hear you now, Judy. No, I definitely can't hear you. I cannot hear you, Judy, and my speaker is, yeah, so.
Can you type her question?
Judy, can you type your question in the chat, please? Because I can't hear you, unfortunately. Thank you, love. Oh, I got that up to 200. I did that. So I think if we've done our job effectively, nope, I don't see that message yet. If we've done our job effectively, you can see that the landscape is changing pretty rapidly underneath our feet. Like, changes are going to be rolled out in August, and hey, we don't have the paperwork for that yet, but I promise you it's going to turn out. So you want to have an agent who's a professional and somebody that, you know, is in the business right now and can actually support you, your friends and family that you're working with, and be fully informed. I came across this article a little bit early, and I thought this was good to use here, is that a January 24 article on AZ Family reported from the Consumer Federation of America that 49% of all agents have sold one or no homes in the last year. So half the agents out there, 0 to 1 home. It's a 10-page contract that if you tried to read it all in one sitting, you would end up in a coma. It is so detailed and boring. 70% of agents have sold 5 homes or less, right? My first year in business, I sold 3 homes. Not impressive, and thankfully people took a chance on me, but right now, right? So 2/3 of the agents out there are not very experienced. So I think choosing your agent right now is a really important step. And, you know, questions to ask when you're interviewing: are you a full-time agent? You can look at Zillow and check agent stats to see how many transactions they've had in the last 12 months and what people are saying about them, other than just, oh my God, they're so nice. Read specifically what they're saying about their agents, because it's going to be important, as we've talked about, to have somebody who's an experienced negotiator in this market. Judy, your question. Okay, I would like to see you doing after these showing okay, great. So Judy's in the chat is saying that basically she would love to do another one of these afterwards, after the forms are completed, so that people can be better informed. Judy, that's a great idea, and I will definitely take you up on. And she can help me design this. She is fantastic. She's designed manuals for a living. So this is like one of the most organized human beings on the planet. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate that. All right. And really, that's what we wanted to convey. At least that's what I wanted to convey so far. Richie, is there anything else that you feel like you wanted to add?
No, I think it's just important that we are just call Dory or I. Let us help you, because it's going to continue to change, like we said. And I think, you know, Judy's comment's great. Maybe that's when we do an in-person and we actually go through those 10 new pages.
18 new
at
forms.
a time. 18 new forms.
18 new forms.
We'll have pizza and beer. I'm kidding. But we can look at, you know, going through the forms just so that you know what they are. and have an understanding of it before you just go out and sign something.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great for us to be able to have that for you.
Fantastic. All right, so Q&A. This is the official Q&A portion of the event. What questions? Are there any other questions that people have? Something you feel that was not covered?
I'll start off with a question.
Yeah,
If I
go
can
ahead.
Repeat it, because I don't know if they can hear
Yeah,
me.
okay.
And I may have stepped out for a second.
That's
Forgive me
fine.
If you covered this already.
Yeah.
But did you talk about the compensation details, whether it's going to be allowed to be in the MLS or not? So if agents will see it or not, you may have already touched on
No, this is great because that's really the crux of it, right? So no offers of compensation will be allowed to be in the MLS.
Can you mention it, can allude to it?
No.
Can you allude to it on Zillow or any?
So it has to be like an order outside of. So it's at first I thought, oh well, maybe I can just type it in the private remarks, like, hey baby, I'll get, you know. No, you can't even have it in private remarks that only realtors can see. You could have a link to a website that then discusses
Now,
compensation.
You could not say, and I know they can't hear me, so you might repeat this, but
Uh-huh.
you cannot say, for compensation details, visit my link below. You can't even say that.
So Jason just asked a great question. Like, can you, like, what's the language on the, if you can, you know, have a link to something outside of MLS to say, like, I don't know the specific answer to that question. That's a really great question. Could you capture that for me, please? Like, can the notes inside of MLS say for compensation information, click here? It seems like you would. Here,
Maybe the link itself is www.compensation.
www.paydemand.com. So this is some questions from Aaron Green, Q&A's from Aaron Green, who's the legal counsel for the Arizona Association of Realtors. Let me see if it's specifically addressed here.
And while she's doing that, that is why on our end, we're going to have a separate line that's going to show if the seller is giving concessions to pay the buying agent. It'll be on a separate line so it does not go toward that 6% with FHA or 3% with conventional if you're, 10% down or less. So that's why we're putting it on a different line, because it's the only way that Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and VA can see that it was paid by the selling client, and where it goes. So that I think that's going to be so that they can keep track of who's paying what. Because at this time we don't know if the buyer is paying them, where that would go on the line.
Really, why wouldn't it go on as a buyer debit?
I don't know. They
Okay.
haven't given us that
See,
info yet.
we're literally still figuring it out. So what it says on here on this Q&A is, the question is, can commission dollar amounts or percentages be advertised? And the answer is there's no requirement to keep offers of compensation secret from the public. In fact, all advertisements of compensation will likely be available to the public, just not on MLS. So it looks like, I'm trying to think logistically, like if you're going to be saying, hey, click out here to get out here to an offer of compensation, it seems like you would need to be able to indicate inside the remarks that this is what this link goes to. It's not just like,
Everyone's probably going to get the, even if there's just a random link, people will be like, oh, this is probably.
yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing.
Exactly. And I think that's part of what, anytime you implement something new, is there's always the, what the letter of the law says and then how it gets implemented in practice. So it probably will be something like that. It may start out explicit and then it may be, something that people just recognize, like, oh, that's where you go to click for compensation details. Great question, Jason. Thank you. Any other questions?
May I?
Yes,
Yes.
I love it.
No,
Sorry.
you're good. No, we
This
want
is
these.
fantastic.
I'd love to, you guys know what you're talking about, so
Uh-huh.
I'd really love to get your insight. What are your feelings on, let's say, first-time home buyers who are really, they're pinching pennies?
Mhm.
They need
Hang
to
on
be
one
healed.
second, Jason. Can you guys hear Jason as he's talking, or let's see if we can maybe get him up closer, because it's just a good question. Okay, I can hear. Yes, thank you.
So I'll stand a little closer. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts, just in general, open-ended question, on first-time homebuyers who may be pinching pennies and they're looking for every opportunity to have to get the best deal they possibly can? That person might have a little bit of, do you think that type of person may end up with a little bit of difficulty getting representation?
Yeah.
Since they are not going to necessarily be able to guarantee that they can afford the commission.
Yeah, so, and I think that's one of the unfortunate things about this settlement is that the, first-time home buyers or just even lower income buyers, that getting together the extra money on top of the down, on top of the closing costs to, then have money to pay compensation, that it might be extra challenging for them. Whereas I've seen tons of reels on Instagram. It's like, it's going to be so much better for buyers because they don't have to pay. It's like, no, they weren't paying it before and now they're going to have to pay it. And that's not going to drop prices. So I think what's going to happen is that rather than making that offer that's at 97% or 98% of asking price, that you're going to see offers that are either at asking or maybe a little above asking price, and then roll the compensation into the loan and hope that it appraises, right? So if it appraises, you're good. If it doesn't appraise, then, right.
It's a full reevaluation, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, so that this is just a question, because right now one of the outs of the contract is that if you don't meet the appraised value, then you can back out of the contract. You can cancel the escrow, get your full earnest refunded. I wonder if there's going to be something special if it's, the compensation fee or
Compensation caveat.
Yeah, so we don't know. Like there's stuff like that, but if it appraises, they can probably roll it in like that and they'll be good. But they've signed a contract that says they are good for that money. And hang on one second, Ashley. And if, depending on the realtor that you have working with you, they might be like, oh, fam, I'm sorry, but I'm coming to your house to collect that. Or they might, have their client's interest, fiduciary interest first and say, okay, we'll find you something else. But great question.
It seems to me this is more of a reason why people should work with an experienced realtor, so you can navigate these caveats and
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because
okay, thank you.
It's taken experience to know it's like, oh, we can pull something from here, or even to know how to get out of a contract without getting burned. It's like you have to know the contract to know how to get out of it without having your client get burned. Ashley, what was your question?
Can buyers use seller concessions to compensate their agent?
So go
Yes,
ahead.
They can't.
And will that continue?
Yeah, and I think that's where we're going to see, that's part of what.
Hang on one second. I just want to make sure. Thank you, Judy. Thanks for being here. So the question was, can buyers use seller concessions to compensate their agent? Go ahead, Richard.
100%. So we went over that a little bit in there. Some of them may, if they give you, let's say they give you 3% to help pay for your closing costs, and you don't have the funds to pay the buying agent, you can utilize those funds to go in that direction if you would like. So you do have that flexibility, because that would be a cost to the buyer. So that is somewhere where they can move the funds as well.
Okay, so as the way it's the guidelines are now is that the buyer agent compensation would fall under the larger category seller concession. It's not a separate category.
Correct.
It's an addition to the category concessions.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great question, Ashley. Anyone else?
Good morning, Dory. This is Rick.
Hi, Rick. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you? Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. So I got June here with me.
Hi, June.
I think I just want to follow up on the question that the gentleman asked that's sitting there in the room with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so my scenario is going to be from a seller perspective.
Uh-huh.
So you have buyers out there who are looking for agents, as always, but now it would seem, and you all touched on this earlier, that if a buyer says, I'm not going to pay any commission to my agent, then it feels like that would be the end of the conversation. Otherwise,
It would for me.
You have agents who would take somebody on the hope and the prayer that the seller is going to pay. whereas in the past it was just understood that they would. So
Yep.
what is your, and I guess I'm understanding that if a seller is going to pay or willing to pay, they can't put that anywhere in the MLS. So I guess I'm confused on, one, how is a buyer going to get to the table if they, not to the table, how is a buyer going to get an agent if they're not willing to pay their own agent? That's question one. And the second is, from a seller perspective, how do we communicate that yeah, we're open to paying, some percentage?
Yeah. I mean, those are really key core questions, Rick. So, you might find a buyer's agent, maybe they're new, or maybe they're just getting back in the game and they need the experience, and they might be willing to, or it's a friend or family member, right? And they might be willing to take on a buyer without, or maybe it's just like a flat fee compensation. You might find that, but I would probably guess that the quality of that agent is not going to be that great, which might work well for you if you're a seller. I've certainly been in situations where I've been the listing agent and I've had a buyer's agent on the other side who I could tell was not as savvy or as informed, and it's worked to the advantage of my clients because the person on the other end. So there is going to probably be some of that, I would say, especially since at least half the agents out there have only done one or no transactions, right? How are you going to communicate as a seller that if it's not on the MLS, hey man, I am willing to play ball? That's going to be, we've been talking about this as agents. Like, how are we going to communicate that? Do we need to call every single listing that we're going to go show if we're showing like 5 or 6 houses in a day? Do we need to hey man, are you paying anything? Hey man, are you, it's like, do we need to do that? And we don't have the answer yet, but it's going to probably involve more, having something in the listing that then has a link that is publicly facing that can be clicked. That when it goes to a syndicator like Zillow or Realtor.com or Trulia, that is something public facing, because I've mostly been talking about stuff in private remarks that only other agents can see. So it's probably going to end up where something that's in the public remarks where it's like, beautiful house, amazing view, that it also has a link to compensation there potentially. I think there are rules against having hot links in the public remarks right now. So we don't know how that's going to work yet, and we are still very much figuring it out as we go along. But I think right now it would just be phone calls.
I'm not an agent, so I want to give you that. But I'm thinking we're going to see what they're seeing in Washington when we were having this call is I'm the person that's selling the home. I tell my selling agent that
Listing agent, the selling agent is technically the buyer's agent.
My
It's confusing.
listing agency, I'm not an agent. That my listing agent, that I'm willing to give up 5%, and she can do however she wants. That's for her and the person that they bring in, because I know that that's what's going to help sell my home.
Yeah, but how's that going to get communicated to the buyer's agent?
So I actually did a class with a commercial team.
Hey.
I did a class with the commercial team, and so this is pretty standard across the board for commercial agents, and this is how they negotiate. It's not, everything's usually a written contract. They write it up.
Yeah,
right
they're
there.
bespoke
It's
contracts.
Never communicated. It's never just assumed.
Yep.
So with commercial, it's always negotiated right up front. So
Yep.
it is a phone call. Every single time they call to show a commercial property, they say, okay, what compensation are we looking at here?
Yeah.
So their production, the commercial team that I met with, said that they predict that it will be a phone conversation. When you call to show the property, they'll say, hey, okay, the compensation for this property is 3%, and they're willing to, help out the buyer too. So that's their prediction.
Gotcha.
Of what's going to happen.
So, and which would be a really big change for residential agents, because normally we just use an app and you schedule it. You don't have to call and talk to anybody. You don't have to text anybody and wait for them. You go click, 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 click. It's like using an automatic calendar, and it gets approved. And you're looking at, it's not unusual to look at 6 houses in a day. It's unlikely you're going to be looking at 6 commercial buildings
Right.
on a Saturday. So you know, the sheer volume of what a residential agent deals with versus a commercial agent, it's like, oh wow, maybe we need to be upping the, you know, listing fee because it's going to be, you know, potentially more labor intensive
Absolutely.
for an agent that is selling a house, which is distinct from a selling agent. I'm kidding. I'm not giving you a hard time. Yes.
Two-part question, and one maybe is probably just a quick yes or no. Does the listing agent, of course, still retains the right to choose not to show a home to the buyer's agent if the compensation isn't in place, right?
No. Holy violation.
Did that change?
Holy violation.
Because right now, like, if there's, as of right now, before this change goes into
Yeah.
effect, and correct me if I'm wrong, it might have changed since I was but if there's a property on the MLS and the commission is like
1%.
0.5% to
Yeah.
the buyer's agent, that buyer's agent is under no obligation to show that property to the buyer, right?
So that's so fantastic, right? So, you know, what Jason was said, if you can't hear, is like, is a buyer's agent, if they see the compensation on MLS right now is like 0.5% or something, you know, relatively low, you're not under any obligation to tell your buyer about that. So that's how human nature works. And that's how people think in reality, but that's actually a violation of our code of ethics, to not show a buyer a property because your commission is low.
So you could essentially, you pretty much have to work for almost nothing or for nothing.
That is how it is right now. Is that because your fiduciary duty is to your client, not yourself.
Correct.
We have fiduciary duty to take care of the client and do what's best for the client and be obedient, right? So that would fall under the heading obedience, which is that, you know, they want to see homes. Like if it's the perfect house for them and it's a 0.5% listing, you need to get your behind in the car if you don't have a buyer broker agreement.
And you're required to represent them then on that transaction.
If
It
you
just seems like
if you have an agreement with them, yeah, you would. And that's why some agents now, like long before even a Sitzer Burnett, they've used a buyer broker agreement because they've run into that situation one too many times and are like, never again. And most of us have just been rolling the dice and hoping that it turns out. But that's exactly the scenario. So no. But the reality is that most people care about their pocketbooks, and if you see a house that's marginal, so not if it's like the perfect house, right? But if, you know, a person sees a house, a buyer's agent sees a house that's like maybe marginal and it's got a 1% commission, are you throwing it in front of your client and saying, hey, let's go look at it? Maybe some will, but I bet you some won't, right? And that's the same reason that for sale by owner sellers, that most of them, if they want to sell their house, will offer a co-broke, a commission to the buyer's agent, some compensation, because they want somebody to bring, like Richie said, it's a marketing fee. You want somebody to come to your house, and especially if you're a FSBO seller, you know, and you're going to be like 1%, it's like, hey man, good luck with that. I really hope that turns out for you. Because people are people, and you know, my mortgage went up, your expenses have gone up, and you know, love what we do, but other than this guy, we're not trying to work for free, are we?
But the thing with that as well, I see for sale by owner contracts all the time, and the buying agent always negotiates with them their compensation.
Yep.
Every single transaction I've seen, because to them, they look at it as, I'm only paying one side, not both.
Yep.
And they're going to handle the contract, they're going to handle title, they're going to handle all of that. So it's the best thing for the buyer so that they are covered with a contract. You know, I have clients that are like, oh, I want to buy this for sale by owner myself. I'm like, please, my recommendation is that you have support.
Yeah.
You have somebody that understands what you're signing. And you want that contract. So for sale by owner, all the years I've been doing this, always do they pay the agent that brings somebody in.
Yep. All right. I think unless anybody has any questions, we're 51 minutes into this thing. We kind of wanted to end it within an hour.
What about as far as new development?
New developments. It's the same thing, right? So those builders are effectively sellers, and they can opt to offer compensation or not. They're going to be bound to the same rules if they have their houses posted on MLS, and not all of them do. I would say the majority don't post their houses on MLS, but if you go to a new home development community and you sign up, like I get emails from a bunch of different builders all the time, and they're like, we're offering this and we're offering that incentive and whatnot. So, but they are going to be bound by the same rules. Yep. Anyone else? Going once,
Going,
twice,
gone.
3 times a lady, and I love you. Okay, I just wanted to, we have a thank you slide on here because we really do thank everyone who is in the room, at home on Zoom. Thank you so much for your time, your attention, great questions, and your interest in being here. We really do love what we do. We like getting paid for it, but we really do appreciate your time and attention this morning and your business in the past and going forward. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your weekend and a safe 4th of July. That'll be here before we know it.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
All right.